5, 4.
Welcome to Casey Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. Casey Cares is the intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. And Casey Cares is proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis. Kansas City is known as the home of American jazz, and no one exemplifies that better than Kansas City legend Charlie Bird Parker. Parker was born in 1920 in Kansas City, Kansas, later moved over to Kansas City, Missouri, where jazz was flourishing. Kansas City, Missouri was one of several spots instrumental in ushering in musical improvisation, style for bebop, for which Parker is identified. And Parker's early music lessons occurred in the Kansas City public schools. He began playing alto sax at age 13 and worked occasionally with semi-professional groups before leaving school at 15 and becoming a full-time musician. Well, now some 101 years later, Kansas City celebrates this musical great with Spotlight Charlie Parker, a series of events coordinated by Casey Jazz Alive. And joining us is Macy Voldemore, who is the Charlie Parker event manager for Casey Jazz Alive. Welcome, Macy.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Thanks so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
And we have to say congratulations and newlywed.
Oh, yes, that is very exciting too.
Productivity in the pandemic year.
Right, there you go.
Well, let's talk though about frame for our audience, Casey Jazz Alive.
Yeah, so Casey Jazz Alive, we are a nonprofit jazz organization. We're a catalyst organization that works to raise the tide that lifts all jazz boats. That is our mission, that's our charge, that's what we exist to do. So whether that is supporting and promoting musicians in Kansas City, educators, venues, jazz supporters, jazz fans, our entire mission is just to elevate jazz and increase presence and make sure that the whole world knows that Kansas City has the best jazz in the whole world.
Your organization is not an old organization, whereas jazz has been around for a long time. Can you talk a little bit about the formation of the organization and how you operate?
Yeah, absolutely. So Casey Jazz Live was founded in 2014 by a small group of jazz leaders in the community. Those leaders were John McGraw, who is our current president, Greg Carroll, who is the vice president, Steve Hargrave, who is the secretary, and Pam Hyder Johnson, who used to lead the elder statesman of Kansas City Jazz, who has since unfortunately passed. But we do credit her with so much that she's done for this organization. And the reason that Kansas City Jazz Alive was formed when it was is because there seemed to be a need in the city for an umbrella organization to bring all of these jazz silos together to work toward a common goal of elevating jazz in Kansas City. So John McGraw, our president, was the president of UMKC Jazz Friends at the time. So he had the students, he had the kids. Greg Carroll at that time was the CEO of the American Jazz Museum. So he kind of had the institution. Steve Hargrave was the president of Kansas City Jazz Ambassadors, so had the people. And then Pam, with the elder statesmen of Kansas City Jazz, had some of the older musicians. So they kind of came together and said, we need one catalyst organization that can work with all of these different pieces of jazz in our community, bring them together and work toward the common goal of raising awareness and elevating jazz in Kansas City.
Does the organization go by volunteers? Do you have professional staff? I mean, you're doing all kinds of things everywhere.
Yeah, we are a volunteer organization. We recently did hire an administrative manager, which she's great. Her name's Ellen. She's wonderful. So we have one staff person. As we look toward the future, we do hope to bring on more people, but we have expanded our board as well this year, which is fantastic. It's been a big goal for us. So we are volunteers, and it's a lot of fun. We really enjoy working on jazz projects. Everybody within the organization does have a strong passion for jazz, of course. So it's kind of fun to be able to see this as kind of a passion project.
That's interesting that you went in a pandemic year-ish and expanded your board. Why was it important for you to expand the board, and how did you go about doing that?
That's a great question. So we started in 2019 working on our strategic plan to kind of look toward the future and plan for years and years down the road. And one of the big things that we knew we needed to do was to expand the board so that we had different voices and different representation and quite frankly, more hands to help coordinate some of the programming and things that we do. So it kind of got a little on pause, I suppose, during the pandemic as we tried to refocus what we were doing with the Charlie Parker events and things like that. So we then, or almost organically, kind of just naturally found the three new additions to our board that are just wonderful. They've been involved with the organization for years, and they're already adding so much to the organization. We're just so lucky to have them.
Well, we know that board development is such an important topic or an issue for an organization. Having those hands, that wisdom, that knowledge, etc. Since we mentioned the big P word, let's spend just a little time there. We're hoping the pandemic will slowly really go away. But how did KC Jazz Alive, how did you navigate during those months of such craziness?
It was definitely a shift for us. So the Spotlight Charlie Parker event is now in its 8th year. And we, in 2020, had all of these really big plans for huge events, bring thousands of people in from other cities, in person, of course. And then once the pandemic hit, we thought, oh, okay, we'll be okay by August. And as we all know now, that was not the case. So we were disappointed because 2020 was the 100th birthday of Charlie Parker. You only get one of those. So this was a big deal, and we really wanted to have an international reach to make sure that the entire world knows that Charlie Parker was born here, and we claim Charlie Parker as our own. And so we still managed to pull off 25 or so events during the pandemic. Many of them were virtual. Many of them were not. We actually were able to do safe, socially distant events during the pandemic, which was great. We had broadcasts that went international, so people around the world were able to tune in and see what we're doing here in Kansas City and to see where Charlie Parker came from. Additionally, we switched some of our other programming that we do throughout the year to virtual, which has been it's worked. We definitely miss getting in person with our patrons and getting to see people and shake hands, and we will get back. But we've managed. We haven't had to cancel any of what we had already planned. We've just had to adjust our thinking a little bit.
So we were chatting a little bit before the webcast about what are the positives? What are you now taking with you and continuing as you move forward as an organization as a result of what we learned from the pandemic era?
Yeah, so one big thing that I think a lot of organizations can probably relate to is the virtual piece of everything. So we host these stakeholder events every other month, and those are panel discussions, and we have KCUR Steve Kraske moderate those discussions. He does a great job. We choose a different topic each time and have different panelists that are local, sometimes even not local, that will join the conversation and give their input. It's very interactive where audiences can chime in and things like that. And before the pandemic, that had always been 100% in person with really no virtual piece. And now that we have switched to the virtual side where we're hosting those through Zoom, as we transition back to in person, which we do plan to do for our next meeting, we are working on developing a virtual component so that we can, one, stream it to those that aren't in Kansas City or aren't ready to come out, and two, so that we can feature panelists from other places in the country or the world, rather than them having to be physically in Kansas City. That's something that we've never had the ability to do, maybe because we didn't know that we could have that ability. So that is one really great piece. that we're excited about. We're excited to be able to extend our reach with the programming that we do. And that's true for the Spotlight Charlie Parker events as well. So we now are going to have more virtual pieces, more things online, so people can explore Kansas City virtually. And all of those things are real positives because we can expand our reach.
So while last year you had hoped people would come in from all over the world, they came in a different way.
They did. We got exposure to cities and places that we might not have had we not had those virtual pieces in place.
Well, let's dig into the big event that's, I should say, series of events, and that's Spotlight Charlie Parker. Share with us what that is from a kind of a global sense, and then we can talk about some of the things you've got planned.
Yeah, so the Spotlight Charlie Parker event is truly a spotlight. So what we do is we partner and work with other institutions, other organizations, other musicians in the community, and just spotlight what they're doing to celebrate Charlie Parker in Kansas City during the month of August. Charlie Parker's birthday is on August 29th. So what we've always done is create a series of events leading up to the 29th as we celebrate Bird, Charlie Parker, all month long. So we have traditionally done 2 tracks with the Spotlight Charlie Parker series of events. We have a venue showcase, which features great venues in Kansas City like the Majestic, the Phoenix, Blue Room, Green Lady Lounge, all of those great jazz clubs. And then we also have an educational track that provides education to the community and beyond on Charlie Parker and on jazz and on composition and all of those great things. So like I said, it is a series of events. It's not just one culminating event necessarily, but we take the entire month of August to just celebrate our jazz heritage.
How far out do you start work on this huge series of events and activities?
Typically, our planning meetings start in November or December. So after everything kind of wraps up at the end of August, we'll have a debrief meeting or 2, and then we'll take a month or so off and then pick it right back up. Because we've learned that it's easier to stay in front of those things and stay on people's minds as they are developing their own events to make sure that there is a strong Charlie Parker focus and to also just celebrate our local musicians. You know, that's a big piece of this too, is it's not just about Charlie Parker. It's about his influence on jazz today and what he has done for our musicians in Kansas City. So the best part about this is getting to highlight the talent that we have in the jazz community here in Kansas City. It's so much fun.
So you have events and activities all around the metro. Is it KC Jazz Alive that's actually doing the nuts and bolts? How does that all come together? Maybe that's the better way to ask the question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So there are a couple of events that we actually do produce, if you will. But more than anything, we are truly just putting the great things that are already happening in Kansas City on our calendar and using our resources to promote what's already going on. Because these venues and these musicians don't need us to produce a bunch of events. They've already got them. They've got the ability to produce events. They've got the talent. They've got great venues. So what we're able to do is work with these venues and musicians and educators and people in the jazz community and just say, hey, what are you doing in August? We'll put it on our calendar and we will use our resources to promote that. So like I said, there are a couple events that we do put together just because they're super fun and we would hate to not see those happen. But for the most part, it's stuff that others are doing and we're just able to promote and share.
Well, let's chat about the ones that you, KC Jazz Alive, really do. Take it away.
So the first one that we're really excited about isn't until August 17th, and that one is going to be at the Nelson Atkins Museum. That one's called Bird 101, The Art of Charlie Parker in Kansas City. And that one's going to be really, really fun. It's in the Tivoli Theater. So we'll start with a screening of Bird, Not Out of Nowhere, which was produced and directed by Kansas City PBS. And it just really tells the story of Charlie Parker. It's got great commentary and things like that from people like Bobby Watson, Logan Richardson, some of the great jazz musicians. So that's an hour long. So from 5:30 to 6:30 on the 17th, we will do the live screening. And then following that, we will actually host a panel discussion to discuss the movie and to discuss Charlie Parker and his influence and his legacy. Our moderator for that event is Chuck Haddix, who literally wrote the book on Charlie Parker, so couldn't ask for anybody better to be involved there. And then our panel will feature Brad Austin, who is with Kansas City PBS and produced the film. And then Bobby Watson, who, if you know anything about jazz, you know who Bobby Watson is. And then Lonnie McFadden, who is literally Mr. Kansas City. He is so lively, so much fun. If you haven't seen Lonnie McFadden at his new club, Lonnie's Reno Club, I highly recommend it. But that event will be held from 6:30 to 7:30 in the same theater, in the Tivoli Theater. So we'll have an hour-long panel discussion. Audience is encouraged to bring your questions and become a part of the discussion. The tickets are only $5, and those are available on our website, spotlightcharlieparker.org. So we hope that we can get a good turnout there. We've already got lots of tickets sold, so we're really looking forward to that one. That'll be a lot of fun and very educational. We'll learn a lot. And you know, I've been involved with this organization and with this event for several years now, and I still learn new stuff about Charlie Parker every day. I mean, he lived a short life, but man, did he make an impact. And then additionally, we've got couple of other things. So the next one that really is produced by the Burnett Music Foundation, Chris Burnett, he is one of our board members, but he has put on, this will be his second year, I believe, fully putting on the Bird Boot Camp. So that's on August 21st, and that is for students of all ages to come and learn from some of the best jazz educators in Kansas City. Learn the music of Charlie Parker and learn composition, learn all of these really great things. What is really cool about that one too is at 3 o'clock after the workshop has ended, this will be held at the Folly Theater. And then at 3 o'clock, all of the students and the educators are going to go outside to 12th and Central and do a salute to Charlie Parker. So if you're in downtown Kansas City, you'll probably be able to hear these horns blowing, and that one will be really, really fun. That event is free for students that would like to join. There is, again, more information on that on our website or birdbootcamp.org. And then following that, we are hosting, in partnership with the Kansas City Jazz Ambassadors, a really fun jam session at the Majestic downtown on Broadway. So we'll be downstairs from 3:30 to 5. They're actually opening up a little bit early for us so that we can kind of have the place to ourselves for a little while, and we thank them for that. So Mike Pagan and BJ Jansen are going to lead that jam session. And what a jam session really is it's so cool because musicians from all over are invited to come and participate. So they can bring their musicians and they can hop up on stage and jam out with Mike and BJ. And then we'll also just have a big group of jazz fans that will just be hanging out. We'll have some appetizers available. The bar will be open. So it'll be a really fun opportunity to just get together and celebrate jazz in Kansas City and meet other jazz fans and get out and be together in person. And that's kind of within that week. That's what we've got planned. And then following that, the next one that we more or less produce is also with Chuck Haddix and Jerry Sanders. So they are going to be our tour guides for Early Bird, Charlie Parker at 18th and Vine. And this is a walking tour of the Jazz District in Kansas City. That event's going to be on August 28th at 10 o'clock. And it's a phenomenal tour. I mean, if you don't know the history of the Jazz District, it is just outstanding how much has happened there, and getting to actually stand there and you can almost feel Charlie Parker's tunes just run through you. It's really quite an experience. Tickets for that are still for sale as well. That's only $25. We'll have water available and all of that fun stuff too. And it's really a cool event. And then following that, we are not producing this one, but there's a lot of great stuff actually happening on the 29th of August at the American Jazz Museum. They're producing all kinds of really great events that will celebrate Bird all day long.
Well, you just don't have enough.
I
I
know.
think
I
we
don't know how
really
we,
need to add to all that.
yeah, we
How
clearly need to add stuff.
do you have opportunities for people to volunteer or help you out?
We do, yeah, absolutely. So, one thing that we can always use is help promoting. So, just a quick share on Facebook of the events, that is huge. The more reach, the better. Additionally, we do need volunteers to help us with the Nelson Atkins event, just to help with check-in and wayfinding and things like that. And then for the history tour, we do need a couple of volunteers to help with check-in for that one too. But again, the biggest thing is really just helping us get the word out so that we can make sure that, because the events that I just named off are just a few. I mean, there's all kinds of just showcase events that are happening at our city's jazz clubs. So just bringing awareness to the calendar is huge because we want to highlight and elevate all of the clubs, all of the musicians that are doing great things to celebrate Charlie Parker and Kansas City Jazz this month.
You're engaged and involved. You obviously are a jazz lover. Why should somebody look into this who really may not even be familiar with the genre of jazz? What is it about it that you feel and the organizers feel is so important and so interesting?
Right. Well, I can definitely relate to that person because, to be completely honest, before I started working with KC Jazz Live, I didn't know very much about jazz. And it wasn't until I moved to Kansas City that I even learned about the jazz presence in this city and truly did fall in love with it. I mean, it's such an interesting art form. It's every time you hear somebody different play it sounds different. It's unpredictable, but predictable at the same time. It is interesting. There's so much history here. Some of the greatest jazz musicians that have ever walked the earth walked these streets. And there's something to be said for that. It's in our blood as a Kansas City community. The Jazz District is such an amazing place. If you go down there, I mean, it just takes you back to, or not even takes you back. It's jazz is still very prevalent today, right now. There's so many great jazz musicians. I've been so fortunate to get to know a lot of these musicians personally and fall in love with their personalities, but fall in love with their music. There's just nothing better than spending an evening at a jazz club with a cold cocktail and listening to the horns and the bass and the drums, and all of it just work together so beautifully. And if you don't understand it, that's okay. I don't fully understand it, but it's still fun and it's enjoyable, and it just makes you realize how historic it is and how important it is to the people of this city.
Well, when you're not engaged, dare I say, overwhelmed with everything that's going on in the month of August, share with us a little bit, what does KC Jazz Alive do those other 11 months of the year?
So we are, what I mentioned earlier, one big thing that we do are those stakeholder events. Those are huge. We do host those again to kind of raise awareness, but those also kind of serve as our listening body. So our name, KC Jazz Alive, is actually an acronym, ALIVE. A is for awareness, to raise awareness for Kansas City Jazz. L is listening, to serve as a listening body. That's kind of where the stakeholders pieces come in, because what we do is we try to listen to the community and listen to the feedback that we're getting and try to make action based on what we've heard. And as we enter a new wave of the pandemic and getting back to in person, we're really excited to kind of restructure that a little bit and listen a little harder and be able to put that together and bake that into our strategic plan as we go forward to make sure that we're enhancing jazz in Kansas City through all avenues. So that's a really big one. There's also a concert that we have that's coming up at Johnson County Community College on November 7th. That's called Kansas City and All That's Jazz. And that's going to be a really cool event too, that will feature a lot of the greats. That'll be a little bigger than just Charlie Parker, because Kansas City isn't just about Charlie Parker. Like I said, it's one about our current musicians, but there have been a lot of greats that have walked the streets of Kansas City. So we're very excited about that. Always interested in being a part of, bigger part of the community and going out to our jazz venues. We have a pretty strong social media presence, or we try to, and promote what's going on in the community, and just work with musicians to promote and support what they have going on.
I think sometimes folks who've lived here, even maybe all their lives, are not quite aware about the richness and the deep history of jazz. Sometimes it's like the out of towners got to tell you about what's
Right.
in your own town.
Right.
How do you all try to tackle that? And I guess the follow-up question would be with the next generation, with the kids.
Yeah, it's an important question, and there are a lot of people that have lived here forever and don't fully understand the importance of jazz and music in this city. One important thing that a lot of people don't know is Kansas City actually has the UNESCO Creative City of Music designation. A lot of people don't even know that. That is huge. It's not New York, it's not Nashville, it's not New Orleans, it's Kansas City, Missouri. Because of our jazz heritage and because of how prevalent jazz still is today. And that's one of those things that we have to get the word out, and we try to do that with our mission to raise the tide that lifts all jazz boats. I think we'll see a little bit of an increase in our capacity and what we can do to enhance that now that we're seeing some more board development and getting a little bit more input and hands from some great jazz leaders in the community. We're very fortunate to have partnerships with the Kansas City Jazz Ambassadors, with the American Jazz Museum, with UMKC Jazz Friends. I mean, there is a huge jazz presence in the community. And to your next question on how to get a younger generation excited about it, UMKC Jazz Friends, that's a younger generation that is literally going to school to learn how to be the best jazz musicians. So we've got a generation that is excited about jazz, and we have the community to be able to support that. Whenever they do graduate, they're able to come out and gig at different places. And granted, we would love to see more places for musicians to be able to play as well. But we're getting there. We're seeing a change, and we're seeing more venues open up, and we hope to see more and more and more over the years. But a lot of the venues here just do a great job of engaging a younger audience. Green Lady Lounge is one that definitely engages a younger audience. It's loud, it's vibrant, it's a lot of fun. Maybe not vibrant, it's actually a pretty dark space, but it's very cool and hip, and people love to go there. But the Blue Room equally is truly a jazz club to its core. And it's all about the music at the Blue Room, but it's also just a really cool space to be. It's attached to the American Jazz Museum, which is fantastic because you can go in and learn all about jazz. And I just think that as we see more and more places pop up over the city, like Lonnie's Reno Club that I mentioned, we'll get a younger audience engaged. They just need to be exposed to it. Once you're exposed to jazz, at least I think, it's hard not to love it, because it is just it's its own thing, and it's so exciting, and it's just fun. It's just a matter of getting people the exposure.
So we just have a minute or so left. Give us again those websites where we can go check out what's available during the month and keep in touch with you all.
Yeah. So our website is kcjazzalive.org, which just kind of has a little bit more information about us. But the main website that you need to write down is spotlightcharlieparker.org, that has all of the events that are happening throughout the month of August that you can attend in person. There's some virtual pieces too. There's 36, 37 events on the calendar, so there's plenty of stuff to do. There's no way that you can say you don't have anything going on in August, because you can definitely go and listen to live jazz and celebrate our city's rich heritage.
Well, we appreciate Kansas City Jazz, or KC Jazz Alive, and everything you're doing to bring everybody kind of under one tent, but everybody kind of keeps their personality.
Absolutely.
And keep, exposing all of us, or re-educating us on what jazz is all about. And that tent's pretty big, and everybody is welcome. So wishing you all success with the events. Will you record any of what goes on in the month of August so people who maybe for some reason can't get out can see it at a later date?
We are planning to for a couple of them. That's kind of still in the works, but we do plan to have some recordings, hopefully, but still encourage people to get out in person if you can. The Bird Not Out of Nowhere documentary screening, that is actually available with Kansas City PBS. So you can watch that. But if you're not in person, you won't get the panel discussion with Bobby and Lonnie and Brad and Chuck. So this year is a little bit more focused in person, but we will have some virtual components as well. And again, all of that is on our website, spotlightcharlieparker.org.
Macy, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. And we wish you all success with the month's activities and ongoing.
Well, thank you so much, Ruth. This has been great.
Thank you for listening to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications and we're proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. To be a guest on KC Cares or underwriting opportunities, please visit our website at kccaresonline.org. And you can spread the love. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. And catch us on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Thank you for tuning in with KC Cares.